In the heart of Abuja, where glass towers kissed the clouds and exotic cars painted the streets with opulence, Yakubu Ahmed was the crown jewel of high society. At only 32, he had already carved his name into Nigeria's elite as one of the youngest and most dashing billionaires. With skin like polished bronze, cheekbones carved to perfection, and a jawline that could slice through arrogance, he was the dream of every socialite and the envy of every man. Women flocked around him like moths to a flame, but none ever stayed long enough to become more than a passing mention in the tabloids. Yakubu had everything: money, charm, influence, but not love. Or rather, he couldn't find a woman who met the impossible standard he had set. His first real attempt at love was Christabel, a stunning, certified chef who could make magic out of anything edible. Her smile was sunshine, and her work ethic was unmatched. But Yakubu ended things, citing her height as a turnoff. "She's too short to stand beside me on the red carpet," he told his friend Sarki one evening, swirling a glass of champagne with casual dismissal. It didn't stop there. Christabel was merely the beginning. Over the next year, Yakubu cycled through a carousel of extraordinary women beauty queens, tech entrepreneurs, architects, fashion designers, all brilliant, graceful, and drop-dead gorgeous. But for each one, Yakubu found a flaw. One was too curvy, another too slim. One too light-skinned, another too dark. One laughed too loudly, another didn't laugh enough. No woman could ever seem to satisfy the void he couldn't name. His mother, Haja Zainab, grew weary. "Yakubu, are you chasing perfection or running from something inside you?" she asked one rainy afternoon. He only scoffed, blaming high standards and the need to find the one. But deep down, even he was starting to wonder if perfection existed, or if it ever should. Yakubu's next few relationships were brief affairs, each woman seemingly more beautiful and accomplished than the last. There was Ifeoma, a dark-skinned beauty queen with a law degree and a voice like silk. She had poise, grace, and the kind of aura that turned heads in every room. Yakubu took her to a charity gala and even introduced her to his business partners. But after 3 weeks, he ended things. "Her legs are too muscular," he whispered to his driver, as if that justified tossing away something that could have been love. Then came Layla, a fashion designer with international acclaim. Her caramel skin and golden curls made her the center of attention. But Yakubu found her too loud, too dramatic. After her, he tried Halima, a quiet, soft-spoken pediatrician whose only flaw, in Yakubu's eyes, was being too skinny. The pattern continued like a well-rehearsed song. Each woman ticked nearly every box, yet none of them were enough. The city watched and gossiped while Yakubu moved from one beauty to the next like a child in a candy store, never finding the flavor that pleased him. Despite his friends' growing concern, Yakubu saw nothing wrong in his behavior. In his mind, he was simply holding out for destiny, for that woman who would stop his world, silence his thoughts, and make every other woman fade into oblivion. He didn't realize he was already becoming a cautionary tale among Abuja's elite, the man who could buy anything but was cursed never to be satisfied. On the outside, Yakubu's life glittered with perfection, but inside something quietly gnawed at him. Nights became colder, lonelier, despite the luxurious silk sheets and endless parties. No woman stayed long enough to leave a memory. Even his dreams had grown silent. Until one sultry evening, at a private exhibition in Maitama, a woman walked in and everything changed. The first time Yakubu saw Lola, it was as though the universe had paused just for her. The event was an exclusive art exhibition hosted by a French-Nigerian collector, and the elite of Abuja had shown up in designer silks and flowing agbadas. Yakubu stood by a sculpture of a bronze lion, casually sipping a rare vintage, when she entered tall, elegant, wrapped in a wine-colored dress that clung to her like it had been sewn into her skin. Her skin was a rich mahogany, her eyes fierce and golden like a lioness's, and her long, silken hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall at night. She didn't look at him immediately, which only intrigued Yakubu more. He was used to women throwing glances, adjusting their posture, trying to catch his eye. But Lola moved with an unbothered grace, as though the room belonged to her. When their eyes finally met, she smiled just a flicker, And in that moment, Yakubu felt something he had never felt before. Stillness. No flaws, no criticisms, just awe. They spoke later that evening under a sculpture shaped like a twisted heart. Her voice was low, rhythmic, like music drifting from a faraway place. She said she was an interior designer, newly relocated to Abuja from Côte d'Ivoire. She was cultured, articulate, witty, and when she laughed, it echoed like water against marble. Yakubu found himself smiling for real, not the polite smirk he reserved for most dates. She asked him questions, listened closely, and challenged him with bold, sharp replies. It was intoxicating. Doom. By the end of the night, Yakubu knew he didn't want to let her go. For once, he didn't care about size or complexion, or what his mother might say. Lola wasn't just beautiful, she was a presence. A mystery wrapped in confidence, dipped in something unexplainable. But what Yakubu didn't know, what no one in that room could guess, was that Lola was not who she seemed. She carried an ancient secret, hidden beneath layers of glamour and charm, and it was only a matter of time before her truth would surface. Yakubu couldn't get Lola out of his mind. From the moment they met, his world became a tunnel with her face at the end of it. They began seeing each other almost every day, private dinners at luxury rooftops, boat rides on Jabi Lake, and late-night conversations in his penthouse that stretched into the early hours. Lola was unlike any woman he had ever known. She didn't chase fame or flaunt his wealth. Instead, she carried herself with a calm power, the kind that didn't beg for attention because it already commanded it. For the first time in his adult life, Yakubu wasn't picking apart someone's flaws. He didn't notice imperfections because he couldn't find any. When she walked, it was poetry. When she spoke, it was gospel. When she touched his hand, it was thunder wrapped in silk. He was hooked, almost frighteningly so. Even his friends noticed the change. "Yude behaved like say she used jazz for you," Sarki joked one evening. Yakubu only laughed, brushing it off, but something deep in his chest stirred at those words. What Yakubu didn't see were the nights when Lola would sneak away after he'd fallen asleep. She'd retreat to the guest bathroom, lock the door, and pull out a small, ancient bottle wrapped in red leather and inscribed with symbols long forgotten. With trembling hands, she'd uncork it and drink. Instantly, the years would drain from her face. The creases on her skin would vanish. Her hair would regain its luster. Her curves would tighten, and the young, spellbinding beauty that Yakubu adored would return. She'd stare into the mirror and whisper, "Just a little longer." Lola had once been an old, forgotten sorceress, banished from her coven centuries ago for choosing love over power. Time had taken her youth, but not her hunger. And now she had found someone who awakened something in her again, someone she wasn't ready to lose. But the magic she used came with a price. Every sip shortened her soul's thread, drawing her closer to a final unraveling. Still, she drank, because Yakubu's love felt like resurrection. In the weeks that followed, Yakubu and Lola became Abuja's newest obsession. Photos of them holding hands, laughing over cocktails, and stealing kisses in shadowed corners flooded gossip blogs. Socialites who once dreamed of catching Yakubu's attention now whispered jealously behind their manicured nails. "She came out of nowhere," one influencer sneered. "She must be doing something." But no one could deny Lola's radiance. There was something magnetic about her. Even the haters couldn't look away. Yakubu, for his part, was changing. His once critical nature softened. He smiled more. He turned down a high-profile date with a senator's daughter, saying, "I already have everything I want." His mother noticed too. Haja Zanab invited Lola to dinner, expecting to find some gold digger with perfect makeup and no depth. But Lola disarmed her with grace and wisdom far beyond her supposed years. She quoted Quranic verses with respect, spoke fluent Hausa and French, and left Zainab wondering, where has this woman been hiding all her life? But not everyone was so easily charmed. Sarki remained suspicious. He'd seen many women chase Yakubu, but something about Lola felt too polished. One night, while scrolling through old party archives, he noticed something unsettling. A woman with Lola's exact face, same eyes, same smile, appeared in a photo dated 1997, standing beside a different wealthy man. Another picture, even older, showed her in 1983 at a gala in Port Harcourt. Same woman, same face. Sarki's blood ran cold. He tried to show Yakubu, but his friend brushed it off. "Are you saying she's immortal?" he laughed. "Maybe she just ages well." But Sarki couldn't let it go. Something was wrong, something deeply unnatural, and as Yakubu fell deeper under Lola's spell, Sarki decided he had to dig deeper before his friend disappeared into a love that felt less like a romance and more like a curse. Lola stood before her full-length mirror, her fingers trembling as she unwrapped the ancient bottle once more. Her reflection stared back a flawless goddess sculpted by time and sorcery. But lately the magic was slipping. Her transformation was slower, less perfect. Tiny lines had begun to creep around her eyes, her energy fading faster each day. She had tried mixing the potion with fresher herbs and stronger chants, but the results were unstable. Earlier that morning, as she sipped tea with Yakubu on his balcony, a fine crack had appeared in her fingernail, black and jagged like a lightning bolt. She quickly hid her hand under the table, forcing a smile, but panic surged in her veins. Her body was warning her. The magic was thinning. If she didn't find a way to renew it, her disguise would fail, and Yakubu would see her for what she truly was. Meanwhile, Sarki intensified his investigation. He reached out to an old friend in the National Archives who helped him pull up photos and files from over 40 years ago. What they uncovered was chilling. Reports of a mysterious woman named Ekayet, who had seduced and married 3 powerful men in the 1970s and 80s. Each man died mysteriously within 5 years, and Ekayet vanished each time only to reappear decades later, under a new name. Each photo looked eerily like Lola. Sarki confronted Yakubu with everything he had. "Bro, listen to me," he said, eyes wild with fear. "This woman, she's not normal. She's been alive for decades, maybe centuries. I don't know how, but something isn't right." But Yakubu, blinded by love, exploded in anger. "You're jealous," he snapped. "You've never liked when I'm happy." He threw the folder onto the floor. "Don't come between me and the best thing that's ever happened to me." That night, Lola didn't sleep. She paced her candlelit apartment, the shadows dancing across the walls like spirits from her past. Her heart pounded not from fear, but from something far worse. Desperation. Her last potion was nearly finished. The roots she needed for the next batch grew only in a sacred grove in Cross River, protected by spirits that no longer welcomed her. She had broken too many ancient laws, used too much forbidden magic. Still, she couldn't stop. Not now. Not when love, real love, was finally within reach. She stared at her reflection again, her face flickering with subtle shifts. For a second, her youthful beauty faded, revealing the wrinkled, sunken face of her true self, eyes pale with age, lips dry as sand. She fell to her knees, clutching the mirror frame, and whispered, "Please, not yet. Give me more time." The mirror didn't answer, but in its silence she knew the truth. Her time was running out. Elsewhere in Abuja, Sarki refused to back down. Though Yakubu had shut him out, Sarki reached out to Haja Zainab. She was skeptical at first until he showed her the photos, the files, the uncanny evidence. The older woman's hands trembled as she flipped through image after image of Lola's face through time. Her mother's instinct screamed. "We need help," she whispered, "but not from the police. This is beyond that." She picked up her phone and called someone from her past, an old seer she hadn't spoken to in decades. Back at Yakubu's mansion, Lola prepared a special dinner. Candles, incense, a new dress sewn with threads of charm. She planned to propose they travel together, leave Abuja for a while, somewhere far where she could buy time, find a new grove, craft a stronger potion. As Yakubu walked in and kissed her cheek, she smiled and leaned into his warmth. But inside, her heart was screaming, because for the first time in centuries, she wasn't playing a game. Hagia Zainab arrived at a quiet compound tucked deep within the hills of Asokoro, where the seer known as Mama Nkechi lived in seclusion. The old woman had eyes like clouded glass, blind to the world but sharp with otherworldly sight. She hadn't aged in years, and her presence felt ancient, older than language itself. As Zainab stepped into the incense-filled room, Mama Nkechi spoke without turning. You've brought the stench of shadowed beauty with you. Zainab shivered. It's my son, she said. He's in love with a woman who shouldn't exist. Mama Nkechi chuckled dryly. She's not a woman, she's a shell, a mask hiding centuries of forbidden hunger. Then the old seer lifted a bone charm and whispered into it. The room darkened. A mirror on the wall shimmered to life, revealing Lola in her true form, wrinkled, gaunt, her once glowing skin now dull and loose. Zainab gasped, tears forming. We must save him, she said. Mama Nkechi only nodded. But it won't be easy. Love makes even the wise blind. Meanwhile, Yakubu was preparing a surprise of his own. He had fallen so deeply for Lola that he had secretly purchased land in Ikoyi and begun plans to build her dream design studio. He wanted to propose by the end of the month. He had even designed a custom ring in emerald stone encased in platinum. I've never felt this way, he told his assistant. It's like she was made for me. What he didn't realize was that Lola had heard the conversation her ears enchanted, to pick up his voice from anywhere in the mansion. Tears welled in her eyes as she sat in the shadows, listening. No man had ever gone this far for her. Not even the kings and generals she once seduced centuries ago. But guilt pressed on her soul like iron chains. She was lying to him, living a life borrowed from darkness. She knew the final potion was almost gone, and worse, the magic now required more than rare herbs. To extend it, she would need blood. Human blood. Lola stood in the moonlight that night, bottle in hand, watching Yakubu sleep peacefully. For the first time, she didn't know what to do. Love had tangled itself in the curse, and now the line between saving herself and saving him was vanishing. The morning after her silent vigil, Lola sat at the edge of the bed, eyes hollow with conflict. Yakubu reached for her waist and kissed her shoulder, humming softly. She smiled, but it was thin-forced. Inside her, a storm raged. The final sip of her potion sat on the dresser in a velvet pouch, waiting. If she took it, she could maintain her illusion for one more week. But after that, she would either need to perform the blood rite or let the mask fall completely. Later that day, Yakubu surprised her with a helicopter ride to a private villa in Yos. As they flew above hills and rivers, he turned to her with eyes so full of love it hurt. You changed my life, Lola, he said, and I don't want to imagine a world without you in it. She fought back tears. No spell could protect her from the ache in her chest. She had done terrible things to survive, but now, for the first time in centuries, she wanted to be good. She wanted to be real for him. Back in Abuja, Sarki and Mama Nkechi were preparing for war. The seer had seen a vision of Lola's final transformation, a grotesque return to her true form in a fiery collapse of her magic. If she drinks again, it will bind her soul to his, Mama Nkechi warned. She won't just kill him, she'll take him with her into the void. Sarki's hands trembled as he packed the enchanted dagger and sacred amulet she gave him. If Yakubu won't listen, then I'll have to protect him by force. That night at the villa, Lola stood beneath the stars, holding the potion in her hands. Her face was beginning to shift again. Wrinkles crept along her neck, her fingers turning gnarled. She had minutes left. Her hands trembled as she uncorked the bottle, but instead of drinking it, she walked toward the edge of the balcony and poured it over the cliff. The wind caught the glowing liquid as it fell, scattering it like dying stardust into the abyss. No more lies, she whispered. But just as she turned back inside, a chilling voice echoed in her ears. You've chosen death, my child. She spun around, no one was there. But she knew the voice. It belonged to the high matron of her old coven, and the punishment for betrayal was still active. Now the magic wouldn't just fade, it would fight back. The morning after Lola destroyed the potion, her body began to betray her. Her skin paled and sagged, her once bright eyes dulled. Yakubu noticed immediately. Are you okay, my love? He asked, brushing her hair from her face. She smiled weakly, covering her wrist where liver spots had begun to bloom. Just tired, she whispered. But every second felt like a countdown. Her magic was dying, and with it, her illusion. Sarki and Mama Nkechi had arrived in Jos, disguised as tourists, Armed with ancient protections, they watched from afar, waiting for the moment Lola's transformation would begin. "We have one chance," Mama Nkechi said. "If she tries to bind his soul, strike the heart. That's where her power lives now." Sarki swallowed hard. He didn't want to hurt anyone, but if it meant saving his brother, he would do what had to be done. That night, Yakubu lit candles all around the villa. He had planned the perfect proposal music, wine, and the emerald ring he had hidden beneath a silver cloche. As he dropped to one knee, Lola's hands began to shake violently. Her body spasmed, eyes rolling back. "Lola!" he screamed, catching her as she collapsed. Her skin peeled like wet paper, her true form flickering in flashes beneath the glamour. "What's happening to you?" Before she could answer, the villa's doors blew open. Sarki and Mama Nkechi rushed in, their charms glowing. "She's not what you think," Sarki shouted. "Look at her!" And then, under the full moon, Lola's disguise shattered completely. Yakubu stared in horror as the radiant woman he loved twisted into an aged sorceress with hollow eyes and a face lined by centuries. He stumbled backward, unable to speak. And in that silence, Lola wept. Lola fell to her knees, the last of her youth disintegrating in the wind. "I didn't mean to lie," she choked out. I didn't want to lose you." Her voice was no longer sweet and melodic. It was raw, ancient, human. Yakubu's face crumpled. What are you?" he asked, shaking. "How could you deceive me like this?" Mama Nkechi stood between them. "She is a weaver of time, a thief of years. She's lived for centuries by stealing youth until now." But Yakubu couldn't process it. He turned away, betrayed and broken. "I gave you everything," he said, "and you gave me a dream." Lola, hunched and trembling, pulled herself up. "I've loved and been feared, worshipped and hunted, but I have never truly felt until you." Her voice cracked. "I wanted to change. For you." But the magic, sensing betrayal, began to turn on her. Her skin burned with invisible fire. Veins glowed red beneath her flesh. She screamed in agony. "It's punishing me." Sarki raised the dagger, heart pounding. "I can end this. I have to." But Yakubu stepped in front of him. "No," he said softly. "Let her speak." Lola's body flickered between youth and decay as the curse battled her defiance. "There is one way," she whispered. "If I give up my immortality, my magic will die. But so will I." The room fell silent. She turned to Yakubu. "If I let go, will you remember me? As I was?" Lola stood in the center of the room, flames beginning to flicker from her fingertips. Her body was rejecting the centuries of magic stored within. The potion's betrayal, the broken coven laws, and her choice to love had all collided. The magic wanted to consume her unless she gave it up voluntarily. But giving it up meant death. No second chances, no reincarnation, no more borrowed beauty. Yakubu stepped closer, tears on his cheeks. "If you love me, why lie?" She smiled sadly. "Because I didn't think you could love who I really am. No one ever has." Her bones cracked as she straightened her back. "But I'm ready now. To be free." And Mama Nkechi warned, "Once the rite begins, it cannot be undone. She will vanish completely. Not even her soul will remain in this world." Lola nodded. "Then let it be so." She took Yakubu's hand one last time, placed the emerald ring in his palm, and kissed his forehead. She turned to the mirror on the wall, chanting words older than memory. A blinding light erupted from her chest as ancient symbols danced across her skin. Her voice grew distant, then faded into wind. Her body began to dissolve, first her fingertips, then her limbs, then her face until only a wisp of golden light hovered in the air like a firefly, and then vanished. The villa was silent. No smoke, no ashes. Just emptiness where Lola had stood. Yakubu dropped to his knees, crushed under the weight of grief and wonder. "She chose death. For truth," he whispered. Sarki knelt beside him, placing a hand on his back. She chose love, he said quietly. Mama and Nkechi stared at the empty space, murmuring a prayer for Lola's soul, even if it had no place to go. They returned to Abuja, but nothing was the same. The gossip blogs moved on. The world forgot. But Yakubu didn't. He built the design studio anyway, named it Eket Interiors, and filled it with pieces that looked like her. Elegant, bold, timeless. He never dated again. Some said he was cursed. Others said he had loved too deeply to ever love again. Zainab finally understood what her son had been searching for all along. Not perfection, but connection. And in the most impossible woman, he had found the most honest form of it. She wasn't perfect, Yakubu once said during a rare interview, but she was real in the one moment that mattered. And that was everything. Years passed, the city changed, but sometimes on quiet evenings, when the wind blew through Yakubu's home, he would hear the soft sound of her laughter, like wind chimes. Once on his birthday, he found a red velvet pouch on his balcony, empty, but scented with jasmine, just like Lola used to wear. He smiled, tears in his eyes. "You still visit," he whispered. Whether it was memory or magic, he didn't care. Sarki got married, had kids. Mama Nkechi passed peacefully in her sleep, a smile on her face. Zainab grew older, proud of the man her son had become. But Yakubu remained solitary. He wrote a book titled The Woman Who Wasn't, a fictional love story that shook the literary world and sold out across Africa. Readers called it fantasy. Only he knew it was memoir. The legend of Lola faded into folklore. Some said she was a witch, others an angel. But Yakubu knew the truth. She had been both. A contradiction, a curse, a gift. And sometimes that's exactly what love is. On the eve of his 60th birthday, Yakubu stood in front of a mirror. His hair was now silver, his once flawless face marked by time, but his eyes were calm. He reached into an old drawer and pulled out the emerald ring. It still gleamed, untouched by age. He whispered into the mirror, "If you can hear me, Lola, I kept my promise. I remembered you. Not as a lie, but as love." For a moment, the mirror shimmered, just for a heartbeat, and in that sliver of time he saw her young, radiant, and smiling. She reached out from beyond time and touched the glass. And then she was gone. But that 1 second lasted forever.